Hello, everyone. Happy 2024. Hello, Matt. I am Tiani, and this is the live with Matt and Tiani, and we are so excited. I'm so excited because we're gonna do things a little bit different today. We were just talking about how we're gonna switch things up and how we're gonna get comfortable with the uncomfortable and talk about personal truths and inner guidance and why resolutions suck and like all those different things, right? So that's what we're going to go with. That's the topic for today. And I want to start off by saying that I used to love resolutions. I've been in coaching for at least 12 years now. And resolutions was kind of my jam until I started realizing that resolutions it's like a negative slant on goal setting, right? It's like I did things wrong and now I have to fix them, right? And that never really sat well with me. And so what I opted to do in the last, I would say 5, 6 years, is I started just setting desires and goals. And it's kind of like a little bit of Byron Katie. Byron Katie talks a little bit about this too. She talks about just having that other slant of the desire map and like how you want things to go and setting the values and the systems and all the things in place that actually resonate with who you are as a person. And so for the last few years, I've been talking about choosing a word or multiple words, 1 to 3 words a year that can sort of set the pace for what you want what you want your outcomes to be. So last year for me, it was freedom. Actually, 2 years ago, it was freedom. Last year was about integrity and activation. Because actually, at your party, the year prior in December, I felt completely activated. I think you and I had a conversation. I don't know if you remember. And I was like, okay, that's it. 2023 is going to be an amazing year. I feel activated. I felt like I was going to start some things, and I definitely did some damage last year, some good damage. And then come this year, I felt we ended on one of the topics that is kind of near and dear to my heart, which I'm kind of running with this year, which is fearlessness and bravery. And so I'm actually using that as a platform for some of my personal work and also as a platform for some things that I want to accomplish for myself in terms of my personal desires. And so to bring this back around, I want to say that the reason I choose these words and why I encourage others to use this word is because these words, whatever words you come up with, is because it's basically a call to yourself, to your inner guidance, to your personal desires on what is it that you really want in this coming year, whether it's the next few months or for the next 12 months. What does that look like for you? And so I'll leave it there and pass it over to you, Matt. Loving the melodic music in the background.
What?
Loving the music in the background.
Oh, I like on Zoom, no one can hear it. People can hear it. I keep forgetting that.
Sounds good.
Yeah. What comes to me is just actually to help us clarify, when you say goals, what do you mean? When you say desires, what do you mean? What is a desire? What is an actual goal? And I ask that because, as you know, in leadership and coaching, there are countless slants on what a goal is and what a desire is. So what is a true, authentic, integrous goal and desire for you, and how do you experience it?
Are you asking me or are you asking everyone?
I'm asking you.
Oh. Well, I think it's related to what I just said about like my inner guidance and it's like an inner calling. And for me, I have certain signs, intuition, gut feeling, a knowing that help me. And it's kind of like a visceral experience as well as, like all the other parts of my body as well, where things will come to me and I'll be like, okay, this is what's happening right now. And what is my feeling telling me? What is my gut intuition telling me of where I want this to go? And what really calls to me, and I think I tell you a lot about human design. And that's one of those things for me, like that gut feeling of, okay, in this next coming year, and I write notes down, does this feel in alignment? Does this feel in alignment? And then that's how I choose what I want to start working on next. by how I respond to that particular thing that I'm looking at or I'm writing about or that came to me. If it feels good, then typically it's aligned and it actually usually goes well, right? So that's where things go for me usually. How about you?
Something that came to me was when we're often setting goals, whether we're setting goals or intentions or resolutions, oftentimes it can get so wrapped up in what we want other people to think about us. We get really wrapped up in like trying to be liked, trying to be approved. I'm going to make this amount of money this year, not because I truly need it or because I truly want it for something in my heart. Rather, it's because so then I can finally look like, then I can finally feel like. And so I wonder for you, like in your process of creating goals, your process of clarifying desires, what are some of the pitfalls or traps that you had to be mindful of so that as you set them, it's not just about finding that feeling, but what are some of the things you might navigate as landmines, we'll call them, along the way? So you're finding your way to your inner compasses. Yeah, this is it.
Yeah. I mean, I think you said one of the really big ones. And I think I think we've all kind of grown up with a cultural awareness of what is my culture going to think, family, social group, all those things. And yeah, I've caught myself looking at and decompressing something I've written and really, really want to do and thinking, is this going to land well with my audience, right? Is this going to land well with my friends if I go this route or if I say this or if I do that? And it's definitely one of the big things that I've had to navigate. I think we've probably all had to do that, but especially now that we're more on social media and there's always a reaction to things or a comment or whatever, it seems so much more in your face. Um, but I kind of took the sort of the direction of it's if it's part of me, if I'm feeling it and thinking it and desiring it, then it must be in alignment. And the people that actually care and that I would care about anyway would like it and understand it, or at least be respectful of it. So
Hmm.
I basically said I don't give two S's about it and just ran with it.
What I really feel in there is your own discernment process of kind of stripping away all the fluff that may get in the way of the most clear, most pure, more uh, firm yes for you. And so it seems like as what I feel from you as you share that is as you go through that process, there's enough clarity and certainty in your decision that regardless of what the world is saying, you're able to stick with it. I'm sure you have moments where it's challenging,
Oh yeah.
however, something I sense about you, Teany, is you're also able to find your way back to what matters most to you. It's like, okay, the world showed me this, what matters most? The world showed me this, what next?
Yeah. And I think it's also that, sometimes when I choose things, they say that God only gives you that one step that you can take, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I'm seeing such a bigger picture, and then I have to kind of bring it down to a couple of manageable steps and things that I can, kind of bring to fruition. But I'm not here for the immediate satisfaction. I'm here for the end goal, for the bigger goal. And for me, that's what I also talk about, like the meaning and the end goal of what the things that you want, which help you navigate all these little, traps that get in the way.
Say more about having that view of the end goal and that actually being valuable to avoid the traps.
Yeah. So, I mean, I talk about meaning, right? So, the meaning behind why you do the things that you do. And for me, it's never about, what people are going to think. It's usually about how I can help or support a certain, mindset, lifestyle, you know, the people that I'm supporting in terms of my work, um, what I want the future of the world to look like, right? I mean, that's an even bigger
Right.
goal. So things like that are the things that I'm like, you know, like I just started planning something that I'm going to launch the next couple of months, and I'm so psyched about it because it's something that people aren't really talking about. It's something that's a hard topic, and I'm not going to talk about it here, but it's something that is an end goal thing, like, yes, this is the kind of people that I want to help. And this is the kind of support system I want to set up for them. And I want people to create lives that they really, are in alignment with and enjoy. And this is a route to get there. Right. So, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Ultimately, what I was looking for was just to see, how you connect to the end in mind as best possible. And then how does that allow you to more intentionally navigate present day? And so, for example, like for me, I have a vision of what my company will be like when I sell it, hand it off 8 years from now. And the more I have clarity on that, the more I can also ask, well, given that, even though I don't know the exacts of what's going to happen from day to day between now and the next 8 years, and knowing that'll evolve, how can I at least let that be something that informs the way I choose today a bit more? And that was what I was hearing you really connect to, is like, I know where I'm going. So it also gives me intention of the day of like, oh, say yes to this, say no to that, boundaries here, boundaries there. Because our most limited and valuable resource isn't our time, it's our attention. And if we don't know what the value of our attention, and we don't know our intention of like where I'm going, of what matters, we're just kind of everywhere. I like how in Alice in Wonderland, the caterpillar asks Alice, which way do you want to go? She goes, it doesn't really, or no, she goes, which way is the right way? And he goes, that depends. Where do you want to go? And she goes, it doesn't really matter to me. And he goes, then you can't choose wrong. So there's a value in what you're talking about, of that clear decisiveness that this is what matters to me this year. This is where I want to see myself go. So you can really devote your attention in a way that works for you. And so that was what I was really hearing, and just wanted to bring in that, because I imagine people listening, as they're looking at their goals or intentions for the year, being more and more clear on what that end in mind is can be very valuable. And that's often where we find the how-to along the way. So I know for me, for example, like I can see this 8-year vision, but I can only see the next 2 steps in front of me.
Right.
And so there's a faith and a trust in that too. The willingness to decide what matters, like, which takes courage itself, because in a world where there's plenty for us to choose, it takes courage to just choose something. And that the whole energy of fear of missing out is actually an energy within us that wants to grow up a bit and mature a bit. Not as an insult, just it's a younger part of us. It's not a more mature adult part of us. And it's been partially trained in us as well. And so being able to have the courage to say, this is what matters, and then just being able to say, okay, what's the 1 or 2 steps, can be something we step into, and then trust that the next step will emerge.
Yeah. So what does your discernment look like after those 2 steps are complete? Like, how do you know what are your next steps to take after that?
Well, it feels valuable to acknowledge first that my process is a little bit different at the beginning of the year. I go through I don't do resolutions, or we might call them goals. I go through more of a redefinition stage, and where I spend the time leading up to the next year redefining the way I see my life, the way I see life in general, and the way I have common terms that have guided me. I redefine them based on who I've become, and then I focus on who I'm becoming. And so when I'm clear on who I want to become and who I feel like I'm called to grow into, I then say, what's the 1 or 2 steps towards that? And then, so for example, 2024 is the year of foundations for me. I'm not focused on major growth. I'm literally focused on foundations of my body, foundations of my mind, which will also be direct experience and research into the company. And then I'm also focused on the foundations of the company. And I have right now 1 or 2 steps, which involves me running through this clarification process with my business coach right now. And then from there, deciding what's next, which is, I don't know if I'm going to need to hire someone, because I don't want to source all these interviews. I don't necessarily, I'm starting to think more like a CEO rather than just a coach, which is revolving the way I think about things and see things. But ultimately, I have to stay in a continual process of what's my vision. And so right now I have my 1 or 2 steps, but every single morning I still continue to engage with, where am I now? Okay. Where is it that I see myself going? What does that show me? Because I learn something new every single day, and I have to stay in the constant process with it. And it used to be that I was just so vigilant and rushed in urgent mode, often from a place of just feeling scarce, like afraid of like running out of time, afraid of running out of money, whatever it was. That I thought it was a waste of time to go through that process. And I realize now that the most valuable part of my day is the time I spend anchoring in what matters and how I'm changing as I go about creating it.
I love that. It sounds like you're anchoring in and grounding yourself in that meaning that you see yourself in, however many years from now, 8 years from now.
Right.
And that is that sort of the jumping point for you, and also the anchoring point for you to get everything done and not fall into fear and not fall into the other traps and all those things.
I have to be anchored in both. I have to be anchored in the present moment, and I have to be anchored in the future. For me personally, I'm more motivated by being anchored in a vision in the future that pulls me forward. Whereas I do know with clients I've worked with, they're more anchored by a vision that's right directly in front of them, born from their experience of the past, which is a very different way of engaging with goals. But what I would say is that anchoring present day every morning, it's from 7 to 10 a.m. for me. Anchoring in that, it really just helps me better understand how my life's evolving, helps me better understand emotions, helps me better understand how to engage in relationships that are present in my life, and start to really just continue to clarify, like, is something actually in service of where I'm heading, or is it a distraction? If something is in my life, how is it supporting where I sense that I'm heading, or is it not? And so it's really that it's not just about avoiding fear or not getting lost in fear. It's about, what is my daily life teaching me that actually further supports where I'm going.
I love that. I love that. So when you're planning for things, I know you only have 2 steps ahead. Are those 2 steps typically like a few months? Like I practice a 12-week year where it's like 12 weeks of time where I plan for something, and then I analyze and then understand what's going on and what the next 12 weeks looks like. What is your sort of personal method for moving forward and to keep the needle moving?
I go where the energy is, meaning I don't force myself into time frames if it feels like the time frame or box I put myself in is depleting. I find the time frame and the entry point that energizes me and allows me to create progress. So, for example, I'm able to feel energized by having some connection to an 8-year vision, even though there's so many things I don't know that's going to happen along the way. And I can be energized by saying, here are like a couple like abstract things with some tangibility by the end of the year. However, if I tried to tell you what needs to happen 12 weeks from now, I have no fucking idea. And if you try to force me to tell you 12 weeks from now, I'm not going to give you an answer, because the way I experience change in reality is based on where my energy is accessible. And so I've noticed it evolves as I evolve. It used to be I could barely think ahead of me a week ahead of me. It used to be that I couldn't tell you what I wanted to accomplish in a month. And so like I see how that evolves as I evolve. And so I really choose to find where is the energy most accessible for clarity and movement.
I love that, because there's so many different ways that people operate, and you can't really pigeonhole everyone into one method, which is why there are so many coaches and so many ways of doing this, New Year's thing, or even just like whatever you're planning for or whatever you desire. There's so many like methods. I love that.
Yeah. And, something I'll state is really valuable. I love your focus on the desires and the goals. What we want has a really important place. And there's also a part for us that recognizes there's different ways to experience wanting. And some wanting can come and be born from our soul, born from our heart. It is a genuine, I want a loving relationship, or I want to do good work in the world. I want to leave an impact with my life. That coin can easily be flipped, and that wanting can be something to fulfill something we believe we need to feel okay. And that's an important distinction to have as you step into creating your year ahead. And this is more of like a guidance rather than an accusation. And noticing, like, when I say I want something, is it because I believe it'll give me something I don't have? Meaning, if I say I want $200,000, is it because I believe that that money will genuinely give me something I don't have? Okay. Well, besides the fact that it'll give you $200,000, what else is it that you believe it's going to give you? Is it a sense of stability? Is it a sense of comfort? Is it a sense of being proud of yourself or being able to give your child something? Like, what is it ultimately? What's the real meaning, the real feeling behind the wanting? Because we may find that as we get clear on our wanting, there are some that are born out of feelings and emotions that will not actually serve where we want to go. And there's ways we can reframe and look at these things in a way that are more empowering rather than disempowering.
Yeah.
That are, like, a friend of mine, we were talking and he was sharing that his focus was to experience less loneliness. And I said, so you're spending your time focusing on what you don't want, and based on a place of judgment about yourself. And so what if it was, I want to just focus on this year being more able to enjoy my own company? How does that feel very differently in the body, in our hearts? How does that energize us differently rather than trying to get rid of something?
Right, because some of those come from a feeling of lack rather than more empowering place, for sure.
So that meaning that you talked about is really valuable. Like, when I say I want this, what's the real meaning behind that? And does that meaning truly serve what I experience as the highest level possibility of my life? And if no, I say get back to work and go deeper.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think part of my work, personal work, is I always tie it to a feeling. And it's that never usually a feeling of lack. It's usually a feeling, an empowering feeling for myself. Like, this is a loving feeling. This is I feel great and empowered, or, whatever those words
Right.
are. So that's where I go usually. So that's an interesting question. Are you creating your goals? Where are you creating your goals from? A feeling of, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of lack and history, even, right? Like past stories, or, of a feeling of what you probably already have, right? You just want more of, let's say, like love. Like, I'm already feeling love. I want to bring more love into my life, or something like that.
Right. And if the truth for someone listening is that they're having a hard time accessing that feeling of more, like, I want to feel more love because I feel like I don't have any, then it may be you want to look at what is the pathway you're taking truly going to fulfill that? And if so, does it fulfill it only in a fleeting, temporary way, or does it fulfill it in a longer term, more whole, sustainable way? And I'll say, from a personal example, my relationship with money and how it was associated with safety and worthiness as a man has been a long time process for me. And I remember when I was in corporate and I reached that point where I was like, once I get director role and this income, I'm solid. I made it. I've made it win. And I remember how empty that felt. And I realized how it was just such a false sense of confidence. It was a false sense of stability. And my life gave me the gift of, when I first transitioned into business, I did so well in my corporate work that I'd convinced myself that when I transitioned into business for myself, that I was going to thrive like really quick. Life had a different idea. I said, nope, there's lessons for you to learn. And the lessons for me to learn were to really face like the intense amount of scarcity and fear that I felt around money, and how I also wrapped my own personal value and humanness up in what I have or didn't have. And really have come to continue. I continue my own process with it. It's like a spiral staircase. You just keep touching these points with new depths of wisdom. But to really come to feel in this last year that, wow, actually, regardless of how much money I have, I can feel deeply stable. Whereas before it was like, even spending money, my body felt like tense and anxious. And now it's like, actually, it's not the money. It's not the money that made you feel stable. And so it's really just meaningful when we can look at what serves us for the long term versus what is fleeting.
Right. I love that because it's really difficult for people to wrap their heads around the possibility that they already have everything they need. Right?
Because our heads can't really wrap around it. It has to be something we feel.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the part of some of the guidance that we're offering here is, let's say you're clear on your goals, you're clear on your desires. And now what you're doing is really trying to get clear on the desires and goals that truly feel like they take you further than maybe what your goals had done last year. Maybe you're really taking some time to consider, well, last year, actually, what did I learn from last year? What did I learn about goal setting from last year that actually is wisdom that I need to take with me this year? What did I actually discover about me last year that would support me knowing for this year? Like even going through that process of really gaining the wisdom of last year and then now turning with your eyes on the horizon and you're looking at these goals, these desires, and maybe you're asking, what are the goals and desires that truly can have the highest impact on my life? Those that feel like they really take me the furthest. And taking you the furthest doesn't have to be your numbers. It can be your qualitative experience of life. Absolutely. Because the reality is the more we qualitatively improve the way we feel about life, the quantitative tends to follow.
Yeah. And it's the simple aspects of those things, right? It's not having all the things. It's not feeling necessarily all the things. Maybe it's just a few things. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in the last few years. It's the simple things and doing the simple work and simplifying all the things in your life and not doing everything always all at once. Like,
What helps you with that?
Unfortunately, it's been certain harsh lessons like we talked about last year. Like I fell off the horse, certain things that are unfortunate reminders. But in between those that don't have to be so critical and, in your face, mm-hmm. It's the moments of silence in between, right? It's the moments of silence in between that you're like, oh, I don't need to go to these places. I don't maybe need to go for a New Year's party. I don't need to hang out with that individual, even though that we do it every week. I just need to do what I feel is the simplest, most aligned, most maybe possibly energizing, or at least, in alignment thing that I can do in this moment.
We haven't really had any comments or anything that we know of. What else do you sense may be valuable for us to share? Any questions that may be being asked? Or anything else that, if you were listening in, you're like, you know what? This would tie a bow on what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, I love when you do these wrap-ups, but I think that the theme for me in this session was really, how are you moving in your life differently that's more in alignment than it was in the past? It doesn't have to be a huge shift 180. It could just be one simple thing. It could be just asking the right questions. Like you and I, for example, have different ways of processing the year and moving forward in our lives. Which one is more in alignment for you? Mm-hmm. For me, it's that, right? It's like, where are the biggest pieces of alignment for you moving forward in your life for this next year?
I would encourage the question of what was it that I experienced as my way of finding integrity or alignment or direction last year, and how is that ready to evolve this year? Because I'll tell you right now, what was my path to finding alignment in 2022 is very different than this year. And it has taken me actually a few weeks to really clarify. Like I had to give myself time and space to really consider, like, wow, a lot's changed. Here's all the things that have changed. One of the big things is the way I make decisions, the way that I find that sense of this is the right step for me has evolved. And I had to spend the time of going, well, how has it evolved? And how do I experience that? Because without that, we can find ourselves in these frivolous cycles of goal seeking if we don't even know how our own inner true north and way of finding inner true north is evolving.
Love that.
Yeah. So I love that, because then you're able to do what Teany said. You're able to find those different pieces of alignment that can make up the whole picture as much as you can find for you.
Yeah.
And it may be that some of the hype around setting it, forgetting it, know your goals, and then just dive the fuck in, that shit can just calm down and go out the fucking window. And what if it is, if the process is feeling too big and cumbersome and pressurizing because it's a whole big new idea, or there's a big change you're in as a person, start with a month. What feels like it would be the focus for January that serves me most? And then do it again at the end of January and see how you've evolved. See how what matters has evolved. Sometimes we can get way too ahead of having the big end in mind and the big goal and having all the answers, and then can feel inadequate if we don't have those answers. And yet we don't need to feel inadequate for that. There's no reason to feel guilty or afraid, because our way is different. And so I invite not the distinction of perfection versus progress. There's a lot more progress to get clear on what January is about than to be frozen about what 2024 is about.
Yeah, truly. We get stuck in processes and systems and all the things.
I know that real well.
I love that. All right. Well, I think our time is up, and I don't know if you have anything else to end with, but I'm really feeling the energy of this year. It feels a lot more calm, in some ways, and directed and focused in others.
Mine feels deeper, more directed, and more rich. And I don't mean necessarily financially. I'm talking about the feeling of it.
Yeah.
I'd like to offer that if there's anyone listening and they're truly trying to find their way with setting up their year, and you'd like some support with that, I'm happy to have a conversation with you. So reach out to myself or Teany, and I'd be happy to spend some time with you, just helping you get some clarity and some direction, even if it's for the next month, and helping you find that path. Because I know that all of us have that intrinsic desire to feel like our life is moving towards something more meaningful for us. And when we have a hard time finding that meaning and finding that path towards it, life can feel flat. Life can feel scary. We can feel like we're falling behind. And so I recognize the value of that intrinsic value. And so I'm happy to spend a little bit of time with anyone.
Falling behind or repeating, right? Often repeating cycles and things, and definitely doesn't have to be like that this year. So love it.
And I would encourage you, if you don't like my cursing, because I say fuck and things like that, you might reach out to Teany for the conversation.
Oh, I don't know. Some of those F-bombs are part of my sessions too.
I do it to be provocative. It's intentional.
Yeah. It's just to light a fire, you guys. Well, thank you, Matt. This was, I love these sessions, and I feel like this was a really sweet start to the year and to supporting those out there that are listening. I encourage you all to just reach out to us, even if you don't seek sessions from us, just to ask questions and, respond to any of the pieces that we just talked about that may be an influence for you for this next year or next month or next week. So take that and run with it and do what you can with it. So.
Thank you for your time, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. See you next month.